Welcome to the Big Success Show. Today, how to get more referrals. Brought to you by financialfreedomtool.com.
Tips to be your best with a professor and Mary-Lynn for your big success.
We're happy today to welcome Steve Woodruff, the king of clarity. In a world full of noise and distractions, Steve helps businesses craft a message so clear that they can be heard, remembered, and referred.
In over 30 years of business experience, Steve has consulted with companies ranging from solo startups to top 5 pharma. Steve's also an author, and he's here to talk with us about his new book, Clarity Wins. Get heard, get referred. Welcome to the Big Success Show, Steve.
George and Mary-Lynn, it is a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's get right to it, Steve. A question for you, because I just found this chapter in your book fascinating. So in business, you say competition is actually our smallest concern. So what's our biggest concern?
Well, we think of competition as this company or that company that's offering similar things. And, that's one level of competition. Mm-hmm. But frankly, the biggest level of competition for all of us is getting the attention of people. It's the noise that prevents people from ever hearing us, knowing us, considering us, understanding us. So we all have actually the same competition, and it's the Goliath of noise and stimulation and multiple channels of information flooding every person's mind every single day.
It's really insane, isn't it? Just how much information is coming at us. And so when it comes to trying to cut through that noise as a business, we've got to try and get everybody's attention. What is a trap that you say businesses fall into?
Well, there are a couple common ones. One is the TMI trap, the too much information trap. And you see it on websites all the time, where people feel like if they've got something to say, they're going to dump it all out there. And they sort of back up a dump truck of white papers and figure everybody's going to absorb it. And that doesn't work. And you also get the TMI factor when people meet you in a networking group and they start speaking a bunch of technical jargon and your eyes are rolling in the back of your head. So the biggest plus that anybody can have is figuring out how to condense and crystallize their message so that it's vivid and interesting and relevant within the first 15 or 30 seconds. I see that, frankly, as the biggest challenge for every brand and every business. Get that message to where it can be absorbed.
Well, and Steve, you talk about this in the book. You have a problem with the term elevator pitch. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. So what's wrong with an elevator? I mean, we hear it all the time. I'm talking to my students, and we always want to get your elevator pitch for your business. What's the problem with it?
Well, I don't have a problem with the concept of the elevator pitch, which is a condensed presentation. The two things I have a problem with are the words elevator and the word pitch.
Aha.
So
what if it was the elevator pitch?
Number one, nobody wants to learn anything about somebody else in an elevator. And number two, nobody wants to be pitched. So the idea that in an elevator ride, we're going to transact a certain amount of information and somebody's going to get it, I think it's a bad picture, it's a bad image, it's a bad use of words. So I've coined a term called memory dart, which I feel is more accurate and actually is more compelling, that we need to get our message down in such a compact way that wherever we are, elevator or not, or across the backyard fence or meeting someone in a social setting, that we can summarize what we're about and plant, like a dart to a target, plant a very compelling and sometimes suggestive, and that in a good sense, not in a bad sense, thought that gets people asking questions and wondering, well, what's that all about?
Coming up, get some ideas to help you create your memory dart. But first, a message from our sponsor, financialfreedomtool.com. Plenty of money for life.
Do you feel doubt when making money decisions? Let the Financial Freedom Tool be your decision-making guide 24/7, 365 days a year, so you can make your next money moves with confidence. Learn more at financialfreedomtool.com.
We're talking with Steve Woodruff, the king of clarity, about his new book, Clarity Wins.
He encourages business owners to create a memory dart, a short, compelling message that helps people know and remember what you do. So, Steve, can you share some tips and keys for creating a memory dart?
Well, I'll tell you what I do as an example because not everybody understands what clarity consulting is. I mean, what the heck is that? I made it up. So to try to put it into terms that would help somebody, I say they call me the king of clarity, which is kind of compelling in already. And how did you get that nickname? And I help people with the 2 moments of truth, and then I shut up. And so I have introduced a term that is creating a word picture, and I've introduced a concept, 2 moments of truth. What's that? And so inevitably, someone will say, well, what's this moment of truth business? And I'll say, the first moment of truth is what we're doing right now, where I have to get across to you in a really short time the fact that I can help people crystallize their message and make it so compelling that others will remember it and absorb it and pass it on, which is the second moment of truth. That 3 days later, when you're talking to a coworker and they say, man, I'm struggling with my direction, or our strategy is all over the place, or our messaging stinks, what you think of is, this guy needs the king of clarity. Mm-hmm. And if I can win in the first moment of truth and in the second moment of truth, I have activated the most powerful business building thing in the world, and that's referrals. Mm-hmm. So every business has some unique angle that can be put in terms that are compelling and interesting and relevant, and that don't have to be absorbed with a bunch of jargon and acronyms and tech speak.
And you call that referral worthy, those elements.
No, actually, I call that being referral ready.
That's referral ready. Okay.
I have 2 terms, referral worthy and referral ready. Now, referral worthy is a character and competence issue. Either you do good work or you don't. Either you're a good person or you're not. So referral worthy is something you have to earn the right for someone to say, wow, I would recommend George. I would recommend Steve or Mary-Lynn. Referral ready, though, is having these word pictures that you can pass on to others so that they can pass you on to the next person. And that is where the real trick is. If I can make you referral ready, then I've activated your most important potential channel for business.
Yeah, because, I mean, every business wants referrals, right? I mean, whether it's a retail store or the insurance guy, everybody wants referrals. And frankly, it's the best way to grow your business because you don't have to spend money to do it.
Well, the funny thing is, I'll stand up in front of any audience, anywhere, and I'll say, what is the best source of new business? Mm-hmm. And everybody knows it's referrals. Mm-hmm. But how much time do we spend in creating referral readiness? We'll spend an enormous amount of time and money in advertising and marketing and social media. What about referrals? Yep. We want to really spend our best efforts in making referrals happen. And I think that is not that expensive a thing to do. It's a matter of crystallizing your words.
We're talking with Steve Woodruff. He's the author of Clarity Wins, Get Heard, Get Referred.
So, Steve, I found this intriguing. Every business owner, actually, we just as human beings, we don't want to be pigeonholed. But you say we do want to be pigeonholed. Why do you say that?
Well, at least my goal is to create a desire to be pigeonholed. Mm-hmm. And here's the reason. We are going to be pigeonholed. Whether we like it or not, the human brain is constructed such that people will remember us or our company or our product and have a few associated terms that are either positive or negative, descriptive, based on their experience. And that's how memory works. So we are going to be pigeonholed. People will remember George with a few thoughts and word pictures and ideas and definitions and experiences.
Okay, and let's not say them on the air, Steve. Okay.
I'm not going to comment on what those might be. But I call those hashtags because that's how we operate in social media is hashtags. And hashtags are what we attach to something to provide descriptive information. So we all have stored in people's minds hashtags about us. What we want to do is we want the right hashtags. That's all. If it's going to happen, then I ought to choose the pigeonhole, and I ought to help you choose the right pigeonhole so that in your memory banks, you can refer me to the right people for the right reasons because I've helped you understand what my sweet spot is. If I leave that random, I'm not helping you make referrals. I'm just leaving you to chance. And why would I do that? I don't want you pigeonholing me in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. So, what are your suggestions on making sure that people are using those right hashtags?
Well, it's a matter of proactively planting them in people. I mean, we've got to, and first of all, a business or an individual has to define their hashtags. You've got to actually get in touch with your strengths. What are your strong suits? What's your sweet spot? What's your ideal client? What's the nature of your offering? What's your differentiating value? Part of the clarity process is boiling down every company or consultant or brand or product into a set of hashtags that really differentiate it. And lots of companies don't do that. They just kind of leave it vague, which is not helpful. So you first have to go through a process of boiling down, distilling, and crystallizing those hashtags. Then you've got to use them in your speech, on your website, in everything that you do. You've got to use reinforcement. So I settled years ago on the word clarity. When I first started doing this, I called it brand therapy. And I quickly decided, you know what, I will never own the word brand. It's got, a million people use it. It's got its own meaning. But what I was realizing is that I go actually beyond the idea of branding into this idea of clarity. And that wasn't a term that anybody really owned. And I decided I was going to own it. Mm-hmm. So whether it's from King of Clarity to Clarity Wins to 1,000 things I've written that use the word clarity, that's my hashtag. And I want people to think of me in that term. Mm-hmm. Now, there may be 5 or 6 other things I can do, but I want clarity work. I don't care about all the other stuff.
Clear about this.
Happen as it happens.
Well, just so you know, clarity is clearly coming through.
Yes, well, of course it should.
Right.
If it's not, I'm not doing my job.
But you're hitting on something. It's hardest to do it on yourself, right? That's why you need a coach.
That is one of the things about human nature is that, and I have a piece of artwork over in my office that says you can't read the label of the jar you're in. And this particular expression, wherever it came from, the origin is lost in the mists of history, has really defined my approach to consulting. I firmly believe that it's tapping into something that's simply human nature. We cannot be objective. By definition, we're subjective. So companies aren't objective about who they are, what they do well. Individuals are not. And it's often in connection with somebody from the outside doing some discovery and analysis and kind of figuring stuff out with us that we get in touch with our differentiators. And I have been through this process, I don't know how many dozens of times with individuals where we'll talk for an hour or two and kind of do the deep dive. And I'll say, do you realize how incredibly amazing this skill is that you have? Mm. They'll go, no.
Yeah.
Doesn't everybody do that?
Yep.
No. Everybody does that. But we're so used to our own forest and our own trees that we think that there's nothing special there. And it often takes somebody else, customers or others, to come alongside and say, look, this is really your sweet spot here. This is what you need to be pursuing. That's
a great point. We feel that every single time we talk with our coach because we get all muddled and our coach helps us work free of it. But you said it exactly. We're too close to it and it's part of our wiring.
Yeah, well, that's one reason why I have a business coach is she helps keep me on track because I get myself all screwed up. I get an idea a minute and I'll go off on 15 directions and she helps bring me back to earth and say, okay, how does this really fit? Is this, it's really something you want to pursue? What's actually going to produce the revenue? So I don't know how often she's helped me from spinning off into some crazy direction.
Well, you, as we said earlier when we introduced you, you've been in business for 30 years. What made you spin off on your own all those years ago?
I came to the conclusion after a couple of 10-year stints with 2 small companies where I got to do sales, I got to do marketing, I got to do management, I got to do projects, I got to do strategy, I got to do a lot of things. And And I realized, having read the book about discovering your strengths, that if anybody was ever going to create a position that was ideally suited for me, it would have to be me. Nobody is going to create a job around me, because companies are there for their own interests and the interests of their customers, and people, employees, I hate to be blunt, are means to an end. So I decided that given who I was and what my skill set was, that at that age in my life, in my 40s, I was either going to go for it and create something that I felt was of enormous value and built around me, or I was just going to have to grit my teeth and go through the rest of my career doing stuff that was maybe kind of sort of good. And I wasn't ready to do that. So I launched my own business 13 years ago, built on network recommendation and referral service in the pharmaceutical industry, which I still do today. And then the Clarity work grew out of that business and has become its own entity, and has become my life passion.
That's so awesome and so well said.
You know, our mission here at Big Success is helping good people have more money to do more good. And when you live your life's purpose, you really are able to do more good. How do you feel that you're making the world a better place?
Well, you know, I'll use a word that is not often used, and it sounds a little sterile, but it's called stewardship. And I believe firmly that we should be on earth to do the best possible work we can and create the most impact we possibly can. And we can't do that unless we know what we're here for, unless we know what we're good at, and unless we know what opportunities to pursue. And I have seen all the way back from my father's work career, where he was in a job that really did not challenge him. He had no hope of moving on. He had a family to support, and he had this ingenuity about him that was never going to go beyond the backyard shed. And one of the things I absorbed early on over the years was, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be that, and I don't want anybody to have to do that. And the more people I've known over the years who have been underemployed or unhappily employed or not really using their gifts, the more determined I am to leave as my legacy as many people as possible doing their best work and making the most impact, because I think that's good stewardship of life.
Oh, goosebumps.
Yes, that's
really
awesome.
good. Yes, and you're doing a phenomenal job.
You are, Steve. We've barely scratched the surface of this fantastic book. Clarity wins, get heard, get referred.
The book includes a guide to distilling your message into keywords and phrases, shares the 5 elements of business clarity, tells you the 3 types of stories about your business you need to have ready at a moment's notice, and so much more. And Steve, we can get the book by going to claritywins.org, correct?
That's correct. It was published through Amazon. That link goes directly to the Amazon page, where you can get a soft cover or e-copy of the book. And you can also follow up with me if you want any further information at clarityfuel, FUEL.com. And you can also find me on Facebook at King of Clarity.
All right, Steve, thank you so much for sharing your time and wisdom with our listeners today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, George and Mary-Lynn.
And we thank you for listening today.
Until next time,
Here's to your big success.
Tips to be your best with the Professor and Mary-Lynn for your big success.
Find big success at biggsuccess.com.